What's up guys, Nick here, and today we're going to be doing attempt 2 at casting a solid aluminum ball. Now the last time I tried this, I encased a styrofoam ball in sand and had a single riser coming out of the top, and I ran into two problems. The first being the lack of vent holes for any pressure that needs to escape, and the second being the fact that the sand isn't rigid enough. As soon as I started pouring the metal, the styrofoam ball instantly burned away, and I think the sand around it collapsed, and this made the ball have kind of an odd shape. So some changes I'm going to make this time is to add a second riser out of the ball to help with escaping gases, and then I'm going to be encapsulating the ball in plaster of Paris. My goal this time is to have a rigid substance surrounding the styrofoam, and the second riser should do its job just fine. So the first step is to cut two foam risers for the ball. I heated up my pocket knife so that way it just slices the styrofoam with ease.
Don't worry, I do have my face mask on because this stuff is something you do not want to breathe in if you're cutting it with heat.
I used Elmer's glue to attach the risers, and once those were dry, I mixed up some plaster of Paris in a 5-quart paint mixing bucket. I submerged the ball, then set some things on the riser so I didn't have to sit there and hold it. After this, I let it sit overnight, and then the next day, I put it in the oven for 250 degrees for 2.5 hours. And then I let it sit in the sun for the rest of the day to try to bake out all the water that was left in it. So then I set up my propane tank and furnace. I lit the propane torch and began the whole melting process. For the metal, I'm going to be using some ingots that I saved from last year. I usually melt down pop cans and pour them into ingots before I cast because the ingots are more pure than just using cans. This in turn gives cleaner metal to use for casting, so that way I have a better cast. But the whole melting process doesn't take that long. My refractory cement lid holds in heat ridiculously well. So I loaded up the crucible with some little ingots. While everything was melting, I lined the outside of the bucket I had my mold in with sand, so that way if any metal spills over, it shouldn't destroy and burn the bucket. When I went for the pour, I have about 3/4 of my crucible full of molten aluminum, so now it's time to actually make the pour. I used two cheap steel tongs from the dollar store to grab onto the crucible. They make special tools for it, and I have been looking into those because they're recommended and they're designed for handling a hot crucible, but the tongs work just fine. I grip it tight and start pouring it into the mold. The metal was going in just fine, and then all of a sudden it started to bubble and shoot out of the mold, so I wasn't having high hopes of having a good casting when I busted it open. But after giving it some time to harden, I destroyed the bucket and the plaster to reveal what was inside, and it almost worked. But we ran into another problem this time, and it was the fact the plaster was still wet deep inside after everything I did to it to try to cure it and harden it and make it dry. But what happened was the molten aluminum went in there and instantly vaporized all the water, and all that steam pressure was stuck in there and it had to get out. And since the metal was already in the mold taking up all the space, there's nowhere for it to go. So what metal was left and liquid just kind of shot out of the top. And when I finally got the ball out of the plaster, you can definitely see there's evidence of steam explosions, little holes all over the place. There's one spot that actually has like a little ravine in it. So it's not the cleanest of castings, but we're making progress. We at least got the shape of a ball. This time it was just an error of not letting the plaster sit and dry. So I am going to be attempting this again. I do have another styrofoam ball, and I'll essentially be doing the same thing, but this time I'm going to use 3 risers, and I'm going to let the plaster sit out for close to a week, so that way it definitely just sits there, dries out, and hopefully won't have any water left in there to cause steam explosions this time. So hopefully third time's a charm, we can get this ball casted. Yesterday I actually made a whole bunch of ingots from a bunch of pop cans I have saved, so I have a lot of aluminum to melt to do more castings in the future. But for now we're gonna keep trying that ball, but I will see you guys in the next video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you are new. Peace out.